And the one witness described it as like they were under a spell. And it's very strange. It almost seems like the plot of a movie. And the idea that our cats are gathering and secretly plotting things is just, it's pretty far out there. In the April 2021 issue of Paranormal Underground magazine, researcher Paul Dale Roberts described a very bizarre encounter that befell a young man and his father while hiking through the El Yunque National Forest in Puerto Rico. Roberts had found himself sitting at the San Juan airport waiting for his flight to St. Thomas in the U.S. Virgin Islands. He struck up a conversation with a fellow passenger, Sebastian de Leon, who was also flying to St. Thomas. Roberts informed Sebastian about his interest in the paranormal, and the two ended up discussing the Bermuda Triangle. Sebastian then went on to relate a very strange encounter that he had when he was 16 years old. Sebastian claimed that in 1978, he and his father were hiking and exploring the El Yunque National Forest in Puerto Rico when they came upon a very strange creature sitting in a tree. The creature, he noted, looked like a black and white house cat, but to their surprise, it had a long, hairless tail similar to a rat. Sebastian's father approached this strange feline-like animal to get a better look. This is when the rat cat, as they came to call it, spit out an orange substance that missed him only by a few inches. Sebastian's father examined the orange substance that was now sitting upon some fallen leaves. To his horror, the leaves started dissolving right in front of his eyes. His father then, sensing danger, yelled out to Sebastian that the orange substance was some kind of acid, and that he needed to stay away, not get any closer. Sebastian's father picked up a rock and threw it at the creature. With that, the creature swiftly, like a rat, scaled up into the tree and leaped onto another tree. It moved so quickly that Sebastian and his father could no longer see it, as it vanished into the foliage. Sebastian told Roberts that the creature they saw that day was, quote, not normal, and that it was definitely no cat that he was aware of. As Sebastian and his father walked away from the area, they almost immediately began hearing a beeping sound. They peered around looking for a source, but they didn't see anything. Sebastian then looked into the sky, and that's when he saw a, quote, bluish orb hovering there. When asked how large it was, Sebastian told Roberts that it was about the size of a Volkswagen. Sebastian got the sense that the bluish orb was, quote, observing them. It hovered in the same spot ominously for approximately 5 minutes before it whisked away at an incredible speed. Sebastian told Roberts that it was his one and only paranormal experience, but it was one he will never forget. According to Roberts, Sebastian wondered if the rat cat was somehow connected to the UFO that appeared mere moments after the encounter. He thought maybe the UFO was observing them to monitor their reactions when encountering the rat cat. Roberts himself could not find any animal that matched what Sebastian saw. It's an interesting cryptid, a cat with a rat tail that spits an acid-like substance. It's definitely unique. It almost sounds like a chupacabra. There are similar reports involving a chupacabra shooting a strange substance, spitting it. I don't know. It's very weird, and the fact that this UFO was, sighted, moments after the encounter with this thing is definitely interesting. It could be a coincidence, but
in 2001, Jeff Crook was outside taking in the autumn weather at his home near Memphis, Tennessee. He was relaxing on his patio, grilling some steaks and drinking a beer. Suddenly, quote, I was overcome by the strangest compulsion to walk to the corner of the house and look in the front yard. As he made his way to the side, he took notice of a strange rushing sound, like a strong wind, only there was no wind that day. Just as I reached the corner of the house and the wind noise reached its loudest level, a large gray cat, about 3 feet tall at the shoulder and with very long legs, bounded across the drive and raced over the top of the hill bordering our property. With its disappearance, the rushing sound of wind faded away. Jeff immediately gave chase and reached the hilltop within seconds. The cat, or whatever it was nowhere to be seen.
I've heard of, people have described hearing like roaring sounds, when they see a UFO and stuff. So is it the same thing? Did this animal somehow step through some kind of a portal, and then there was this sound that accompanied it, and then when it was out of sight, the sound went away? I don't know. It could be just a weird coincidence. Maybe a plane flew overhead at the exact moment that this happened, and he somehow attributed the sound to this cat.
Quite a few years ago, I covered a case involving a gathering of cats. I had found the story in the now long defunct TrueGhostStories.com website. At the time, I didn't really think too much about it beyond that it was very strange, a creepy story. It wasn't until later that I discovered that it was an actual phenomenon. Fortean Times magazine even began referring to it as cat conventions. Flying Snake, a cryptozoology magazine, even discussed the phenomenon in a November 2012 issue. I figured I'd go over the earlier case while also diving into some of the others I had collected. An agitated cat drew a 6-year-old girl to the door. Her cat's shadow was there perched at the screen door, desperately wanting to go outside. They had a private walkout porch, which went down into the yard. Realizing that something outside was getting her cat worked up, the young girl walked over to him and peered out. At first nothing, then moments later some black cats appeared walking out of a path from the woods. I can't remember how many, 6, maybe 7, cannot remember, but they came out in a single file line. There was a tree stump in the clearing behind our house, and the cats walked to it and assembled themselves like they were having a meeting. There was one cat amongst them who was significantly bigger than the rest. He, for some reason to this day I feel it was a he, took a seat on the stump, and the others sat and faced him. They were intently looking at him, and he at them. The young girl continued to watch out the door window as Shadow growled, hissed, and wildly scratched at the door. She noted that her Shadow, all black, was nearly identical to the felines in the yard. Shadow was frantic. Whatever these cats were up to, it was making him very agitated. You name it, Shadow was doing it, but those cats, things, never acknowledged him. Not once. I was mesmerized by them. I called to them over and over and got no reaction. The young girl turned and rushed into the kitchen to get some bologna for the cats. Her mother, standing in the kitchen, asked what she was up to. The witness recalled telling her that she was feeding some hungry kittens in the yard. She then turned quickly and headed back to the door. I opened the screen door and threw food down to the cats. They didn't even look over. So, about now you would think I should be scared. Their behavior was so strange. I called a couple more times and finally one acknowledged me. Sort of. It was the big one sitting before the others. He merely glanced up at me, stared at me briefly, then turned his head away back towards the others. Shortly thereafter, they quietly walked back into the woods. I ran downstairs and outside to the back of the house and into the woods where the cats had gone, and they were nowhere to be found. I never saw them again. Upon telling her mother about the strange cats, the mother dismissed her, chalking it up to her wild imagination. They lived in that house for only one more year before finally moving out. Later in life, it was brought up again, and the mother recalled the day in question, and admitted that it frightened her. She said even though to this day she wants to believe it was just my fantastical imagination at work, she just can't wrap her head around it. I was obviously not dreaming because, well, I did nap. I was a hyper 6-year-old. But she admitted that it scared her, and it just made her even more uneasy about being at home at night alone with the kids in that big house in the woods. When Patrick Ford was 14 years old in 2010, he recalled being awoken late one evening to the incessant noise from a number of cats, which were in close proximity to his Bexhill-on-Sea, East Sussex home. He decided to go outside and investigate the commotion. The back garden of their home was enclosed by a high wall, and just past the one side was a road. The noise seemed to be coming from that direction, so I grabbed the top of the wall, hoisted my head above the brickwork, and peered into the road, which was lit with street lamps. I was astonished to see a large circle of cats surrounding 2 cats who appeared to be facing each other off. The proceedings appeared to be under the authority of a large ginger tom sitting in the circle to one side of the other 2, overseeing the confrontation. The moment the cats became aware of Patrick's presence, all of the cats immediately ran off, except for the large ginger tomcat, who seemed to stare at Patrick for a few seconds. It then slowly got up, very disdainfully turned his head away, and walked off slowly down the road with his tail erect. In 2009, Donald Parr's half-Siamese cat fetched him from the house and took him down to the shrubbery at the bottom of the garden. At the time, Donald was living in Brendan in North Devon. There I found 5 other cats in a rough semicircle, he recalled. His cat then took a position facing the other cats. After a period of cat talk, where it was obvious I was being introduced, each cat took it in turn to caterwaul and receive response from each in turn. The vocal session lasted at least 4 or 5 minutes, after which the visiting cats dispersed and I was taken back to the house. Donald was convinced that he had observed some kind of ritual and considered himself privileged to have seen it. I have discussed this event many times over the years, but never got any meaningful information. In 2010, a police officer named Andy, last name not disclosed, provided an anecdote to the Fortean Times about something strange he and his partner observed while on patrol in an undisclosed UK town. I am a police officer and routine night patrols are part of my regular duties. One quiet midweek night in early December 2009, my colleague and I were doing our usual local burglary prevention patrol. As we turned a corner into a well-known local estate at 2 a.m., my colleague braked sharply. In front of us was a big fat white cat with patches of tabby in various places, facing a semicircle of smaller cats, all wearing collars. For a few seconds, Andy and his partner stared at the grouping of felines before breaking out in laughter at the peculiar sight. The big moggy in the center, who appeared to be holding court, was not sitting in a normal position like the others, but in a relaxed manner, almost on his tail, with his legs spread apart. We joked that all he needed was a hat and a cane, and he would look like a pimp or a gangster. None of the cats moved or even turned except the big white cat, which stared at us looking nonplussed, then opened his mouth. The engine noise didn't allow us to hear if he made any sound, but at that moment all the cats sauntered off in different directions. Mr. Big waited, then lazily got up and swaggered off into the night. The whole incident lasted approximately 10 to 15 seconds. Had we disturbed a cat underworld meeting?
In 2006, Ron Brain was walking to his house. It was about 10:30 p.m. and quite dark, he recalled. That was when he noticed something that amused him. I saw a gathering of about 15 cats sitting close together in a circle around a wild rabbit, about 100 yards from my house in Bridgend in South Wales. I stopped and watched them. After a few minutes, they slowly dispersed. Tracy Searle recalled some very strange incidents involving her cats in the summer of 2006 while at their house in Alexandria, Virginia. At the time, her 2 female cats were about a year old. We like having our cats in at night, and as the twilight was deepening and they were still out, I went out to look for them, figuring they would be hanging out in our yard. I discovered not only our cats, Shadow and Dusty, but every cat at our end of the block. Prescott Charlie, British Shorthairs, and Mouse, American Tortie, who belonged to a British family across the street, and Pizza, Calico Barn Cat, who lives on the street behind. These cats rarely get along under normal circumstances, and it was unprecedented to find them all in the backyard grouped in a loose circle. It looked for all the world as if they were having a meeting, although I didn't notice any cat particularly in charge. They were all relaxed. There was none of that body tension that is so apparent when cats are irritated by other cats. Tracy admitted that she was quite surprised by what she was seeing, like she had stumbled upon something very strange. When I came suddenly into their presence, it seemed to break a spell, and they started wandering off in different directions as I collected Shadow and Dusty. There was still no running or slinking or other startled cat behavior. It was really weird. There were other evenings that summer when I would look out and see them all in the backyard, but I tried to leave them to get on with it. A lot of my longtime viewers will probably remember that I had made this video years ago about a gathering of cats, and I'd gotten the story from trueghoststories.com. It's a defunct website. They used to have thousands of ghost stories and cryptid stories and all different types that people had sent in their true experiences, and I had thought it was an interesting story at the time. I'd never really heard much anything similar, and I decided to make a video about it, and I never really thought much of it after that. And then I come to learn later on that apparently this is a phenomenon, and that a lot of people around the world have observed cats behaving strangely, and so I thought that it was interesting too that there's all these different sources for this. Like I said, the magazines, long defunct websites. Is it just a coincidence that everyone's kind of describing the same thing, that they are encountering cats sitting in a circle, semicircle? There's usually a cat in charge, and when people stumble upon them, the cats sort of react like, uh-oh, we gotta go. We gotta break it up. And the one witness described it as like they were under a spell. And it's very strange. It almost seems like a plot of a movie. And the idea that our cats are gathering and secretly plotting things is just, it's pretty far out there. But I just thought it was an interesting, phenomenon that I'm now becoming aware of. And it is creepy in the sense that it sounds like they have another way of communicating beyond just meows.